Actually, that was great. It's brilliant idea to take some involvement. Yeah, Jim Cohen. Yes. Oh, the organizations. I think that. But I it's really nice to you.
Oh. Say Bruchim Habaim B'Shem Adonai. Make sure everyone, can everyone hear? Praise are you that you're here to pay respects both to Bob Frishman and of course to share your loving presence. If not words, then certainly the presence, and more often a hug for this wonderful family, certainly for Mike and Stacy and Michelle and Shira and Maya and Naomi and Charlie, for Roberta. There are loved ones here who are struggling as they're saying goodbye to their loved one. And we're saying goodbye to a good friend. And so your presence here is blessed. Your thoughts and feelings are a blessing of support. And I pray that as we share these words together, and I put some prayers in that little handout, and others will be coming late. That's okay if you could share with one another, so everyone would be able to participate. Because I wanted everyone to be able to have your voices. That's what's important. As the family gets to hear your voices, and there'll be loved ones and friends who are online who'll be able to hear the voices. I know that Bob's sister Joyce, who I had a chance to talk with, she's online, and so she and Mel are there and thinking, and I've got some of her words to share as well. I just want to begin with a little passage from Psalm 16. Shavidi Adonai l'nagdi tamid bi, Mino kol amod lechen samat nebi v'yagid kavodi, af b'sarai yishkon leveta ki lo ta'azov nafshi lishon, lo titen chasidcha lirot shachar. I've set the eternal always before me. God is at my side, and I shall not be moved. Therefore does my heart exalt, and my soul rejoices. My being is secure. For you will not abandon me to death, nor let your faithful ones see destruction. You show me rather the path of life. Your presence brings fullness of joy. Enduring happiness is your gift. It's a traditional meditation at the beginning of a funeral, and yet its words are odd. Not exalting my soul is not rejoicing. And at the time of loss, we feel anything but secure. And yet, the other day, Mike, when you and I were visiting Dad at Shalom Park, that's what we're trying to convey to him. He knew that he was in his last of days. And yet, the security, the sense of satisfaction of knowing that the loving, wonderful family that he helped to nurture, they were strong and good and loving and they'd be okay. And that is all any of us can ask for at the end of our lives, is to know that the people that we loved most, the people that we devoted most of our energy to, they're going to be okay. And that's a sense of satisfaction. Of course, there's anything but easy for us with masks and face shields and those hospital gowns that make you put on. I'm sure our presence was not as comforting as we had hoped, but he went with it. He smiled with it. And he knew that we would remember him with love. And that is the greatest security we can have. If you'll share with me responsibly on that very first page. In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember him. In the opening of buds and in the rebirth of spring, we remember him. In the rustling of leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember him. When we are weary and in need of strength,
we remember him. When we have joys we yearn to share, we will remember him. The 23rd Psalm is on the next page. And it speaks of that courage that we have even in the face of our mortality. And that each of you know that he did show such courage even towards the very last part of his journey. In Hebrew it says, Mizmor leDavid Adonai ro'i lo aksar b'not deshi yad b'tzeni. Amen menufot yanchaleni nafshi yoshevei. Yancheni b'magalei tzedek l'ma'an shmo. Gam ki ilei b'geit hamavet lo yirara ki ata imadi. Shivtecha mishentecha chema yanachamoni. Ta'arok b'fanai shulchan neged tzorvai. V'shanta v'shemen roshi kosir ravaya. Achtov v'chesed v'dufuni kol yemei chaya. V'shachti b'veit Adonai le'orech yamim. Let us say together in English. A Psalm of David. Adonai is my shepherd and I shall not want. God enables me to lie down in green pastures and leads me beside still waters. God restores my soul and guides me in paths of righteousness for the sake of the divine. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of Adonai forever. Just a few moments ago when we were sharing the Kriya, I mentioned the passage from Kohelet, which we're about to read, which says there's a time for tearing and a time for sowing. So if you please read, Hebrew begins, the Kozman ve'ed chefes takat hashamayim eid laledet ve'ed lamut. Let us read together. A season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven, a time for being born, and a time for dying, a time for planting, and a time for uprooting the planted, a time for slaying, and a time for healing, a time for tearing down, and a time for building up, a time for weeping, a time for laughing, a time for grieving, a time for dancing, a time for throwing stones, and a time for gathering stones, a time for embracing, and a time for refraining from embraces, a time for seeking, a time for losing, a time for keeping, a time for letting go, a time for tearing, a time for sowing, a time for silence, a time for speaking. I wanted to share a few words. Time for speaking. Because we don't say goodbye to a loved one without sharing words of tribute. In the Talmud, it is written that Yochanan ben Zakkai asked his disciples, each of whom was a sage, what was the best characteristic for a person to live and to strive to be? One answered, to have a good eye. Another answered, to be a good friend. A third answered, to be a good neighbor. And a fourth answered, to have foresight. Yochanan ben Zakkai thought each of those were noble. But the sage, Rabbi Elazar, taught, what is the best way for a person to live? To have a good heart. Rabbi Yochanan said to them all, I prefer the words of Rabbi Elazar, because his way, having a good heart, includes all of yours. How so? A person with a good heart is generous, wins friendship, and is a good friend himself, is a respectful neighbor, and pours out his love and affection to his children. Anyone who has spent 5 minutes with Bob Frishman knows he had a lev tov, a good heart. Bob was born June 17, 1943 in Brooklyn, New York, to William and Lillian Frishman. He loved the Brooklyn Dodgers. Mind you, he lost that love when they moved to Los Angeles. He was athletic and disciplined, waking up most mornings at 5 a.m. in order to work out, just like his son. He was an outstanding tennis player, and most endearing, he was a wonderful brother. Bob's older sister, Joyce Eilish, wrote this loving message. Joyce said, Bob was my younger brother, and I know he would have been happy to know that all of you are here to honor his life. My name is Joyce Elish, previously from New York and now from Florida. When Bob came into the world, I knew my life would change forever. I loved having a younger brother, especially one that was so caring, thoughtful, bright, and truly special. He had every good quality, a true mensch. Although since he graduated college, we never lived in the same state, we remained close through visits and phone calls. I'd like to share one of my fondest memories of Bob. About 59 years ago, my husband Mel, Bob, and I were staying at our parents' house, waiting for them to come home from a vacation in Arizona. When I went into labor with my firstborn, Marcy, my husband quickly went back to bed, put the covers over his head, and wanted no part of this. Luckily, my brother Bob was there. He was the one who timed my labor pains and called the doctor when it was time to go to the hospital. I could always count on him for everything and anything. He was always there for me and for everyone else. One of my friends sent me this famous poem that I found comforting. I'd like to share it with you. Don't think of him as gone away. His journey's just begun. Life holds so many facets. This earth is only one. Just think of him as resting from the sorrows and the tears in a place of warmth and comfort where there are no days and years. Think how he must be wishing that he could know today how nothing but our sadness can really pass away. And think of him as living in the hearts of those he loved, for nothing loved is ever lost. And he was loved so much. I will miss my brother more than words can say. I love you, rest in peace. That was from Joyce. Bob attended City College in New York and earned a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering and a master's degree in business administration. In his early career, he worked in the aerospace industry at Pratt Whitney. He later took jobs at various companies in the plastics industry around the United States before finally settling in Colorado in 1988. In 1967, he and Eileen Steinberg were married. They loved to take long road trips and to travel. After one particularly long road trip, their daughter Stacy was born in 1976. After another long road trip, Mike was born in 1978. Those were wonderful trips. Yes, he was proud of being a chemical engineer. Mike remembers that whenever they were in a restaurant, Bob would inspect various items manufactured with plastic to investigate where they were made and how. Nevertheless, his career took the back seat to his loving devotion to his family and friends. Even after he and Eileen divorced, they remained very good to one another. In about a moment, we'll hear from Stacy and Mike and the grandkids. I also want to mention, however, his wonderful friends at Temple Sinai, especially those in the EDU Chavurah, many of whom are here. That's a Chavurah that focused on education, learning, discussion, and yes, once in a while, I see him pointing at a number of you, once in a while, some arguments. That's where I first met Bob, actually. I was invited on a number of occasions to speak at Chavurah events, including a weekend at Dillon Lake. They were all smart, joyous, fun, warm, and friendly, and Bob was in his element. Bob also had great poker and bridge buddies, and Gene, a number of you and the good buddies are here as well. They've been playing together for a long time. And of course, it's important to mention the love that Bob shared with Roberta Greengard. She lost her beloved Richard 13 years ago and he buried just that. It was quite a loss for Roberta and the family, and it took the love of a good-hearted man, a Lev Tov, to help lift your spirit and everyone else's. About 8 years ago, Bob and Roberta began a friendship that blossomed into a marvelous love story. They traveled all over the world, to Cambodia, Egypt, South Africa, and many trips to Israel. They loved to bike, and Roberta even got him to be a pretty decent golfer. True to form, Bob embraced Roberta's kids, grandkids, and her sister, Diane, Shelley, and Cara, and Andy, and Andrew, and Kenyon, and Rory, and Ingrid, and Isla, and Oliver. Loved them all as his own. Yes, there are many different qualities that define the character of a person. Having a lev tov, a good heart, is considered the greatest of them all. And though we mourn his passing, let us express the gratitude for the time we had with Bob Frishman, a man truly blessed with a good heart. In about a second, I'm going to, Stacy, I'll have you come up, and then Mike, and I know that his grandkids are going to come up, and Shira, I know we'll say a few words, but also Maya will be there, and Naomi and Charlie, and you'll say whatever comes to your heart, okay? Stacy, would you like to share?
My dad made Mickey Mouse pancakes on the weekends when I was growing up. He made S-shaped pancakes for me, M-shaped pancakes for Mike. He tried lots of different shapes and was usually pretty successful. At least that's what my childhood memory tells me. Every Saturday morning, I make pancakes for my kids, except during ski season. And every Saturday morning, whenever I pull out my green bowl from under the counter, I think of him. My shapes are never as good as his were, and the girls can probably attest to that. But making pancakes always seemed to directly connect to these fond memories. Sometimes it's the smallest things that are the most precious. Like when we were growing up, if we wanted to make sure our leftovers were there the next day, or the bag of cookies still had something inside it, we would literally have to put our names on the item. And most of the time that actually worked. Like the time that I wanted a dog so badly that I put newspaper clippings of the Denver Dumb Friends League ads for adopting a puppy everywhere so he wouldn't expect them. Taped to the lamp switch, placed inside his briefcase, and so many surprise hidden places because he was adamant that he did not want a dog. And then later when we got a dog, he became such a softie and a dog lover. Like the times that he helped with big projects, such as helping to build a picket fence in our backyard in City Park and helping to build our amazing sukkah when the girls were little. He always brought along many of the tools my grandpa used when my dad was growing up. Then there are the seemingly little things that are actually big things. My dad would always drop me off and pick me up from the airport, no matter what time of day it was, even though he loved to go to bed early. He made sure he was awake to be there. I can still feel the warmth of his big hugs enveloping me in such a sense of safety and security as he sent me off to travel around the world. I've been at the airport a lot recently, and every time I walk in or out, I see him in so many places in such an intense way that I don't think it will ever go away. I hope it'll never go away. In his memory, I pledge to never refuse a request to help somebody to the airport. I will consider it an honor and will remember him every time. This is a big thing in my book. And then there are the difficult things. When my parents got divorced, I probably spoke to my dad 2 or 3 times that following year. I had just moved away from Colorado, which was painful enough. And this happened simultaneously. I was angry. I didn't know how to talk to him. People asked me if something were to happen, wouldn't you regret it? And for some reason, I never thought that way because I knew it wouldn't last forever. For that next year, he never once pushed me. He never once tried to make me talk to him. He knew this would be devastating for me, and he knew I needed time to heal. He was patient and waited for me to come to him when I was ready. Patience. My dad had that in spades. You need to have patience while teaching a teenage girl to drive, although it turns out Mike is the one with the heavy foot. He took me out early on weekend mornings in the empty office parking in BTC and taught me about blind spots. When it snowed, he took me to the parking lot at Cherry Creek High School and told me to floor it and then slam on the brakes and get the feel of getting out of that spin. My confidence and knowledge about driving comes from him. And now as a parent, I can see that took a lot of trust and patience. Never-ending patience, never-ending kindness. My dad was always thinking about others. On the day that he was transferred to Shalom Park Hospice, after he got settled in his bed, he put his hand on mine and asked me if I was okay. Me. I know he worried a lot about me in the last few years. And I also know that there's no way I could have gotten through this time without him. He was my rock. Always knowing he was there to listen, not to judge, just to support me on my journey. What a gift and a blessing. I love the way he cared for his grandchildren and honorary grandchildren in a way that communicated there was enough love in his heart to spread equally for everyone. I love the way his dad jokes and sense of humor made Maya's face light up. I love the way his face lit up when he held Shira for the first time, his first grandchild, a role he was born to fulfill as a grandfather. I will forever be grateful for Roberta for so many things, but especially for being there at the moment that he passed. To know that he was not alone is such a gift that brings me great comfort. I never envisioned we would be standing here today. I thought we had at least another 10 to 15 years. It never crossed my mind that he wouldn't beat this. It's a strange thing to think about how someone so essential to your life is not physically present anymore. But in each of the memories I described and so many more, he is with me every day. His patience and unconditional love. I already know these character traits will not disappear from this world anytime soon, as I see his patience, joy, and unconditional love in the way my brother is a father to his children. Mike emulates him in so many ways. What a gift it is to have unconditional love for both of us. Zikronam Libracha, may his memory be for a blessing.
Amen.
Thank you all for coming. I'm honestly stunned at how many people are here and how many people's lives my dad touched. Before Naomi was born, there were a lot of things that I was scared about. But the one thing I knew how to do was how to be a father, because I had learned from the best. I couldn't have asked for a better dad. When I was a kid, he was always there to tuck me in at night. If he was on a business trip, I could always expect him to leave me a Hot Wheels car or some other gift, small gift by my bed to wake up to when he got home. I can remember him teaching me how to swim in the JCC pool in Stamford, Connecticut, and how to ride a bike in the parking lot. He was a big do-it-yourselfer and taught me how to fix anything mechanical, whether it was a car radiator or a dishwasher. The one thing he didn't teach me is how to purchase a snowblower so your child isn't forced to shovel 2 feet of snow off the driveway by hand. I had to learn that one by myself. My dad was a quiet guy for whom family was the most important thing in the world. He was never happier than when he was spending time with Stacy and I, his grandkids, Naomi, Charlie, Shira, and Maya, his partner, Roberta, and her family, who he loved like his own. When COVID prevented him from seeing Naomi and Charlie, he would play online chess with them. He wasn't flashy, and some of his were so old that they came back into style a second time. If he were here, he probably would have said we spent too much on the casket. We had a very special relationship that I wouldn't have traded for anything in the world. He was the best man at my wedding, and we still had regular lunches where we discussed the kids, cars, and how to get rich in the stock market. He was so looking forward to spending more time in Scottsdale and traveling with Roberta and Naomi and Maya's bat mitzvah later this year. I can easily say that I am the man and the father that I am today because of him. Thanks, Dad, for everything.
Shara, Maya, Naomi, and Charlie.
As I sat thinking last night, trying to write something worthy of my grandfather, all my words were stuck in my head. I had known this person all my life, had laughed with him, and discussed many things. But it was like I had a well of memories and thoughts, and I wanted to share them all. I didn't know, I still don't know, how to communicate who Grandpa was to me, but I'm still going to try. My grandfather was an inspiration. He was dedicated, humorous, and always put others before himself. I remember that every time I would see him, he would give me a big hug and we would compare the size of our hands. Grandpa always won. We had so many fond memories together. We went on walks in the park and stared out the window at all the beautiful sunsets. I remember his 75th birthday party, where we all got together, Roberta's side of the family and the Frishman side of the family. We played games, ate lots of food, took hundreds of pictures, and overall had an amazing time. Grandpa was so happy. The truth is, my idea of Grandpa consists of a series of moments. The jokes he told, the support he gave, and the time he willingly dedicated to each of us to make us feel worthy and loved. I will forever miss his courage, his advice, and his presence in our lives. A light has gone out of the world. A force of goodness has left us, and he will be forever missed and loved. Today and always, we commemorate a light that was strong and fighting until the end. Zichronam livracha, may his memory be for a blessing.
Grandpa was such an incredible grandfather. I couldn't have asked for anyone better. I was sorry.
When I was little and up until this point, Grandpa was always there. He always told me to be myself. So I wrote a poem because I suck at grammar and stuff. So, Grandpa, who bounced me up and down on his knee as I giggled and laughed, who made silly faces as I stared with small baby eyes and a smile on my lips. Grandpa, who listened as I told my troubles and handed me wisdom when I needed it. Who looked at my insides and not my outsides. Grandpa, who didn't judge me for my actions, but what I did to fix them. Who comforted me when I was sad and joked when I was happy. Grandpa, who arm wrestled me and probably let me win. Grandpa, who will forever be remembered, forever cherished, and forever loved. Forever will he be in my heart. I will forever remember his dad jokes, his sarcasm, but most importantly, the love and care he showed for everyone around him. I had no idea how much I would miss him. I loved him. Everyone here did. He spoiled us grandkids as a token of his love. He never hesitated to make me laugh, whether it be, I'm hungry, hi hungry, I'm Bob, or can you make me a sandwich? Poof, you're a sandwich. No matter how many times I heard these, they were somehow still funny. From going to the stock market show to riding down the South Platte Trail, I had so much fun when we were together. You'll always have a place in my heart, Grandpa. I hope I'll never forget the memories we shared. It's hard to believe that I'll never see him again, but what I know for sure is that he'll never leave my heart. I love him. always remember you and love you, Grandpa.
There's a passage on page 4. I'm sorry. It's page 3. Please read this with me. Birth is a beginning and death a destination. But life is a journey, a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, into looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is the beginning, and death is the destination. But life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage, made stage by stage, from birth to death, to life everlasting. It's a time where we will lower the casket, and in but a moment, as soon as it is lowered, I will, Feldman's has provided some earth from Jerusalem, and we will have the family place that first, and then each of us will have a chance to fill in the gravesite so that his remains will always, his physical remains will be protected, just as his spiritual remains are in our heart. God is given, God is taken away. Blessed be the name of God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher yatza etchem b'tzamo v'zal v'chavker etchem b'tzubo v'imit etchem b'din v'nata b'tachechem chayei olam. Baruch atah Adonai Hayan ha'emet. We praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who forms us in the divine image, who nourishes and sustains us in goodness, and yet who has made us mortal and has implanted within us immortal life and spirit. We praise you, O God, judge of truth. Atagi bol elam Adonai rab lo hoshia v'chaker chaim b'chesed mechayei meitim b'rachamim rabim somech noflim v'rofei cholim matir aserim kayem emunato lo shnei afar mi chamocha ba'al gvorot u'midom elach melech memit kayem atzmiach v'shia v'ne'eman atah la'achayot meitim Baruch atah Adonai notea v'tochenu chayei olam. Eternal is your might, O God. All life is your gift. Great is your power to save. With love, you sustain the living. With great compassion, you give life to all. You send help to the falling and healing to the sick. You bring freedom to the captive and keep faith with those who sleep in the dust. We praise you, O God, who has implanted eternal life within us. This is the earth from Jerusalem, specifically from Mount Olives. It's considered the most significant place in which any of us can be buried. Of course, it's limited, right? But Feldman's helped to bring some of that earth from Mount Olives here. So a little bit of Jerusalem will be with Bob as well. family and friends. The tradition of Gaurav, ensure that the casket is protected, the earth fully covered, is one that we do with hesitancy, which is why the first shovel or two after the shovel, we don't want to be here. We don't want to say goodbye. But we must take care of his physical remains. We must protect legacy. Shovels on either side. Working this tradition is not then to hand the shovel to someone else. When you're finished, place the shovel in the earth so that the next person can fully participate by taking the shovel and doing all other stuff. If you like to form a line on either side, please do so.
Make sure you get pictures of that.
I just want to say hi. It's good to see you. Open my kisses. So good.
On page 4, Zel Malay Rachamim, this prayer that mentions that which each of us have been sharing in the last 48 hours. That though physically he is gone, his neshama, his soul, is living on. His neshama, Yitzor B'Tzvah HaChayim, is bound up in the bond of life, of the living, with you. His Hebrew name is Ruvain ben Velvul Elian. If you're able, would you please rise? El Malay Rachamim Shochein Mamaromim Hamzeh Menucha Nechona Al Kanvei Hashchina B'Amorot Kadoshim V'Horim Kazoharat Ki Hamazirim En Nishmat Ruvain ben Belvul Ve'Eliana Shalach Le'olamo Began Eden תהיה מנוחתו, לכן בעל הרחמים יסירהו לשאת כנפיו לעולמים. בצרור החיים נשמתו, אדוני הוא נחלתו, וינוח בשלום על משכבו, ונאמר Amen. Let us say together in English. O God, exalted and full of compassion, we pray that you will grant perfect peace and eternal comfort in your sheltering presence to the soul of Bob Frishman. God of mercy, protect his soul forever. May his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. Adonai, you are his portion. May you rest in peace. Let us say, Amen. The Kadisha Tome, the Mourner's Kaddish, is on page 5. We'll recite it slowly so everyone will be able to participate as we say these words that will honor his memory. Yitkadal, v'yitkadash, shemei rabbah, ve'alma devavra chirute, ve'yamlich malchute, ve'chayechon u'vyomechon, u'chayedecho be'et Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv ve'imru, amen. Yehi shemei rabbah mevorach ve'olam ul almei almaya, yitbarach ve'yishtabach, ve'yitpa'ar ve'yitromam, ve'yitnaseh, ויתהדר, ויתעלה, ויתהלל, שמי בקדושה ברכו, לאלה מנקו ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, לאמירם בעלמה, ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה, וחיים עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. On that last page, there's a few words that I'd like to share, please, as we say, for the loved ones, for the family, for the ties of love that death cannot sever, for the companionship we shared along life's path, for those gifts of heart and mind which have now become a precious heritage. For all this and more, we are grateful. Now help us, O compassionate God, not to dwell on sorrow and pain. Help us instead to find within our hearts the courage to return to the tasks of life and its joys. Amen. I'd like to remind you, we did send out a hyperlink for both tonight and for tomorrow. And it's both, I think you guys sent it out as well to, we sent it through the Sinai community and you sent it to other friends and loved ones. Tonight at 6 o'clock, it's going to be more of a social gathering where people will be able to come to share stories and loving tributes. That's at 6 o'clock tonight. And then tomorrow night, it's Wednesday night at 6 o'clock, I'll lead a more formal Shiva service, a Ma'ariv service. And again, we'll have a chance to share stories and memories as well. But the hyperlinks are out there and provided for everyone. For Stacy and Mike and Michelle and Roberta, and for Shira and Maya and Naomi and Charlie, for all the family. And we say, may God comfort you along with all the more in Zion and Jerusalem. Amen. Go forth with life, go forth with peace. Amen.